So today, as we are considering how we're all shaped by testing, we get to read our scripture today about, of course, a time when Jesus faced testing and trial in his life. So I'll be reading from Matthew 4, chapter 4, verses 1 to 11. Then the Spirit led Jesus up into the wilderness so that the devil might tempt him. And Jesus had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. He was starving. The tempter came to him and said, "Since you're God's son, command these stones to become bread." Jesus replied, "It's written, people won't live only by bread, but by every word spoken by God." After that, the devil brought him into the holy city and stood him at the highest point of the temple. And he said to him, "Since you are God's son, throw yourself down. For it is written, I will command my angels concerning you, and they will take you up in their hands so that you won't hit your foot on a stone." Jesus replied, "Again, it's written, don't test the Lord your God." Then the devil brought him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. He said, "I'll give you all these if you bow down and worship me." Jesus responded, "Go away, Satan, because it's written, you will worship the Lord your God and serve only him." The devil left him, and angels came and took care of him. Pastor Will.
Thanks, Aaron. Testing. I had to do that with the theme that we have. This is a season of testing. And it's no coincidence that the season of Lent lasts 40 days. Now, if you do the math, it'll add up to 47, but you don't count the Sundays, apparently. That's the rule. So 40 is a number that comes to us whenever there is testing in the Bible. The people of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years. Jesus was tested in the wilderness for 40 days. There are other numbers. A few years, 2015, I talked a few times about the number 15 in the Bible, a symbol of deliverance from God. We see the number 100 often as a sign of divine completion. The number 7 comes up, the number 12 happens a lot. And I wonder if we would retell some of our stories with these biblical numbers, what would we do? How would we talk about the 40s in our life? Now, some of you are uncomfortable. You are approaching or have already passed your 40th wedding anniversary. So is that a time of testing? Would you tell it that way, or would you intentionally use a different number to not indicate that the marriage was a time of testing? We can retell our stories in ways to highlight these meanings. But I think the story that we have here today, whether it's the numbers or just the images in it, of all of the stories of Jesus, I think this might be the most relatable. Now, you might push back a little bit there and say, well, we're not going out into the wilderness. We're not putting ourselves through a process where we're intentionally allowing ourselves to be tempted. That's what Jesus was doing. Other religious groups have done that throughout history, but we don't do that. How can we relate to that? Right. But I think we can. All of us at some point have had to leave the comfort and security of home. And sometimes we get to make that choice. We reach a certain age, we reach a certain level of independence, we have a level of wanderlust, is this fancy word, that we want to go and we want to experiment. Sometimes we're booted out. Sometimes home is no longer safe. But when you are home, you sort of know what to expect. You're going to get, hopefully, as we're talking about before, hopefully you're going to get decent meals. Hopefully it's a warm, safe, secure place to sleep, to read, to think, to discuss the world. And there are temptations at home. We're going to push back against our siblings. We're going to ask for more food maybe sometimes. But generally, home is also a safe place from temptation. But when we leave, then the temptation changes. Because at home, people are watching. At home, the lessons that we've received from our parents and teachers and pastors and whatever, they are all fresh on our minds. There are pictures on the wall. There are artifacts on our shelves that remind us of where we've been, what we've been taught. And so the temptations aren't very strong. But when we're away from home, those reminders aren't there. The careful, loving oversight that our parents want to give us, it isn't there. The embrace of the community that we were familiar with, it isn't there. So when we stray from home, whether that's the house that we live in or the geographical community that we were brought up in, when we stray from home, temptation seems to come a little bit more powerfully because we don't have the support that we had. So in this story, Jesus is intentionally removing himself to experience this testing and trial. But we do the same things. We just don't know that we're intentionally putting ourselves into a place of temptation. So Jesus removes himself. Jesus is in the wilderness, removed from society. Temptation happens. It happens to us too. We just think that we have all the right ideas in our head no matter where we go, so it's fine. Yeah, but the reinforcement of those ideas is at home. And the allure of breaking those rules is stronger away from them. And you might say, well, sure, that's one point, but Jesus is tempted to do things that we can't do. We can't turn stone into bread. That's right. We can't do those specific things. But you can do a lot of things. Some of you are smart. You can look at new information, absorb it, learn it yourself, teach it to other people. Some of you are gifted with words. You can take the words, you can take a situation that's happened and you can explain it well. You can convince other people. You can make it sound interesting and beautiful. Some of you work hard and you get money for it. Some of you have musical talents, you have people skills, you have all of these skills we have. We're not Jesus level skilled. We can't perform miracles, but we have skills and abilities. And as soon as you have a skill that you think you are good at, Satan will tempt you with that skill. If you have money, you will be tempted to use that money for your own gain and for the exclusion of others. If you have the gift of being able to convince people of good things, you will be tempted to convince people of bad things. This is the way that the world works. This is the way that our brain works. This is the way that human history has worked. When we have something that we are good at, Satan will tempt us to use our good for his bad. This resonates with Jesus' experience. And we can say, well, we haven't been offered great power by Satan. That's unique to Jesus in this story. That's not ours. But it's the same. We are we live in a world, we don't even realize it, but we live in a consumer-minded world. I'm going to leave a blank here. The customer is always right. You know the answer. And that sentence means something to us as customers. Right? Because I brought a product home, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. I deserve it to do what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to get my money back because it failed my expectations. I'm the customer, I'm always right. Now, some of us have worked on the other side of that equation, And you've had customers coming to you asking for and expecting special treatment because they are always right, and you know the customer is very rarely right. That was my experience when I worked in retail. And so we don't think we have great power, but we do. And some of us are tempted to use our great power. So we go to a restaurant. Somebody's entire job is to bring us our food, make our experience as good and as comfortable and as happy as possible. And we have great power in that moment. We can be gracious and accepting. We can be friendly. Or we can make their job difficult. You forgot this. You didn't bring this on time. I asked for it this way, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to financially reward them or punish them because of their level of service. That's great power. We have great power with our money and with our consumer mindset that we and the world that we exist in gives us. We have great power. And the temptation to use it well or poorly hits us so often we don't even think about it. The story of Jesus' temptation should resonate with us much more than I think the other stories. One of the things that we do in the church that other people don't do so much is to personify our temptation. We might tell a story of something we've done wrong and say, well, the devil made me do it. I gave in to temptation, right? Nobody at work is going to talk like that, right? The person on the news isn't going to explain a story that way, but we do. And sometimes it's a shortcut. It's an excuse. It gets us away from accountability. But it is our experience. We feel that. We feel that personally. And outside of the church, temptation language feels a little bit strange. We understand temptation as being presented with an idea that may harm us, but presented in a way that deceives us about the harm. That's not a textbook definition, but that's part of how we understand it. Well, that's also marketing, right? If you watch a television commercial or on the radio or a billboard, whatever, and you look at it with a skeptical eye, as many of us can, you will see that the thing that they are selling you is not being completely honest. You are being tempted. And sometimes they'll just come right out and say it. If every now and then on my phone, I'll be presented with an advertisement and it will say, you've got to try this new game, it's really addictive. Yeah, but is that what you want? Like, do you know what that word means? Like, do you know what other things are addictive? This is what you're building off of? And sometimes I've been walking through a shopping mall and somebody will offer me a sample and they'll say, can I tempt you with a cookie? Well, you won't be the first. But tempting, is this what you want to do? That word means something here that it doesn't mean outside of the church. We understand temptation as something that is bringing us to do something that is bad for us, bad for our spirit, bad for our community. And this is something that we work hard to avoid. And some of us carry that as a legacy more than we should. We carry it on our shoulders. But this temptation isn't supposed to be this burden that saps the joy out of everything. There's a satire news website that I look at sometimes. You probably see the same one. And it says, Mennonite man doesn't know what to give up for Lent because everything fun is already forbidden. So this is some of the dilemma for us. What am I supposed to give up? I don't get joy from alcohol anyway, so I won't benefit from giving it up. But Lent is supposed to be a time where we intentionally test ourselves. We intentionally deprive ourselves of earthly joys to make us more aware of God, God's presence, God's care for us. So this is a theme that we're looking at this Lent. We're being shaped by testing. We're being shaped by a variety of things. And I was trying to find connecting points with this idea of testing. What does it mean for us to be tested in good ways? And I heard a story this week about a man named Sean Parcells. And he ran a business, a private autopsy business. And funeral homes and hospitals and whatever would call him, and then he could do the autopsy to see if he could get a specific explanation of why somebody died. And the business made money. He had a charming manner. He was an easy person to talk to. He was passionate about the subject, passionate about exploring the answers to these mysterious deaths that would happen. He was well connected. He had all sorts of friends in the medical industry, doctors, pathologists, all the people that he needed. One problem: he had no credentials of his own. So he was performing autopsies, but he had never been trained to do that. He somehow conned a whole bunch of people to the point where he could run this business and make himself quite wealthy. So all these families had contacted him, had reached out to him to see if they could get clarity on the death of their loved ones. And he had no business involving himself in those stories. He had no credentials, which means he had not passed adequate tests. It's a weird way to say it, but we do this a lot in our lives, where we talk to professionals and we sort of take for granted that they know what they are doing. If you get pulled over in your car, that's not going to happen, just theoretically. If you get pulled over in your car and you look, the person standing there has a badge. They didn't make it at home. They were given the badge after they wrote a whole bunch of tests to demonstrate their knowledge, their competence. When you go to the doctor's office, the doctor demonstrates a certificate on their wall. I have a certificate at home from the school that I studied at that says that I studied, that I took the tests, that I passed the tests. Those pieces of paper, they're not just decorative. They're not just there to make me feel better as the pastor in my office, but they're there to make me, the customer, feel better, the patient feel better. All of those things demonstrate testing and passing of tests. Being tested is not fun. I still have dreams from time to time that I'm sitting in a university auditorium with a test in front of me, and I have not studied adequately for the test. And that should feel more strange than it does, but I'm just in this dream, and there's this test, and I don't know what to write, and I'm looking around, everybody else is doing fine. And slowly, very slowly, it dawns on me, wait, I don't think I registered for this class. I don't think I went to any of these lectures. In fact, I think I finished university a long time ago. Oh, right, yeah, and then all of a sudden the dream world ceases to exist. You might have similar dreams that way that kind of touch on some of the fears that you have. We don't like being tested. We don't have to like being tested. But none of us likes dealing with professionals who have not been tested. None of us relies on the help of other people who have not been tested. If you're getting a house built and you meet the construction crew and none of them have built a house before, you're not going to feel very good about the purchase. Right? We want to know that the people who are guiding us, who we are paying for their services, know what they are doing. How do we know that? Because they have been tested. We also are tested in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives. And there's a funny in hindsight. My dad used the word funny a lot of times where nobody was going to laugh. In Low German, there's this funny doesn't mean the same as funny. Funny, ha-ha, funny, strange is how we would have said it in the 90s from a Saturday Night Live thing. But there's a funny thing that happens to us in our moments of testing. We convince ourselves that the testing is almost over. We go through this all the time. Right now I'm just a little bit busy with work, but as soon as this project ends, then I'll be able to relax. And then in school, okay, this is a really stressful semester, but as soon as this semester ends, then the next one will be easier because I've gotten all the hard stuff out of the way. And, oh man, dating is really stressful, but as soon as I get married, it'll be a lot easier. And, oh man, changing diapers is really stressful, but as soon as they're out of diapers, parenting is going to be a lot easier. And then, what is this? I've just got this weird little sickness right now. As soon as I'm done with this sickness, as soon as this batch of medicine is done, then I'll be healthy and comfortable. Sometimes it's right. Sometimes those things do end and it does get better. But most of the time, that test ends and we're given a new one. Now, I don't want to depress anybody in here. I think you guys, with your stories, could depress me more than I could you. We all go through testing. Some of it we choose, right? We choose our school programs. We choose our line of work. We choose that testing for ourselves. We choose the relationships we get into. But we don't choose the illnesses that hit us. We don't choose the accidents that happen. We don't choose the children that fall into our lives one way or another. We don't choose all of our testing. And we don't choose if we pass or fail. We put our work in and hopefully we pass. God has outlined for us a path of testing, and we get to choose how much work we put into it. We also don't get to choose what we are, what we look like when we come through it. We're working at it. I am continually humbled by the stories I hear from all of you. Your fight to overcome illness with integrity. Your struggle to demonstrate love in a situation where it's not being reciprocated. Your struggle to make the best of yourself academically, professionally, economically, when a long list of stumbling blocks lay ahead of you. All of us are tested. And in that testing, we can find Jesus being tested with us. He was tested ahead of us, and he is right beside us in our testing. In the end, what do we become? Well, like I said, we don't get to control that. But in the end, I hope that we become more patient. I hope that we understand more clearly the need for love in our lives and the lives of other people. I hope that it means that we understand the world around us better, that we're more able to be gracious to other people in their times of testing, because we've learned how it feels when someone does not show us grace in our testing. We are being tested in good ways and in bad ways. The choice that we have is to put our best into it so that we will be our best coming out of it. So in our testing, may God be with us. May we see God through our tests, and may we more closely resemble God and demonstrate the teachings of Jesus in our formation and testing through the experiences that God sets before us.